Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Rectified Podcast. Today, my guest is Arian Radmand, the CEO of IgnitePost. And together, we will be talking about how to use surprise and delight in your customer journey to create customers for life. Arian, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. And I can't wait for you to share your knowledge with our audience. Let's kickstart this episode by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dive in. This is going to be super fun. So for everybody, my name's Arian Radmand. I'm the founder and CEO at IgnitePost. And basically what we do at IgnitePost is we're a service that helps brands create magic moments for their customers using real pen and ink handwritten notes. So our platform, what we do is actually part hardware and part software. So the kind of cool techie part is on the hardware side. We have robots that hold real ballpoint pens and will write out real handwritten notes in an actual in a handwriting style. And then what we do is we layer on a nice software layer to allow folks to basically leverage software to plug and play into their e-com platform or their marketing automation tools. And basically the combination of these two allows those brands to create perfectly timed and crafted moments that drive users to action. So that's the kind of very quick overview of what we do. And a big part of it, like you said in the beginning, is helping brands create that surprise and delight factor, creates customers for life and keeps them coming back again and again.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen your product. It's pretty amazing. I've seen the robots and, well, not live on video, but
Yes.
they're very cool. The handwriting is so real, like nobody would ever know that it's a robot that did it. So, all in all, I really love your product. But let's talk about how we can use these products in the customer journey. And in order for us to talk about that, let's start by saying what is a customer journey and what's going on there and how we can plug in your product in that customer journey.
Yeah, sure. So that's an awesome place to start. So, from a high level, a customer journey is basically the path that a customer takes in the process of interacting with your brand. And so the interesting thing here is that no two are alike, right? Everybody can have a different customer journey because you can really break it down into multiple different parts. So you have, the initial part, which is kind of discovery, right? So someone might hear about your brand from multiple different channels, right? They might see a post on social media or they might, visit your website or, there's so many different ways that or they might hear an ad, right? So initially there's so many different ways someone might hear about your brand, but that's all part of the customer journey. So that's number one. The coolest thing is that it's completely different for everybody. And so you can kind of break it down into multiple different parts of, discovery. And so someone might not even, be aware of your brand. They just kind of hear about your brand. The middle part of the funnel is kind of like the acquisition part where they know about your brand. They might be in different phases or different levels of intentionality of whether or not they actually want to purchase something from you. You've got the activation piece, which is kind of the middle of the funnel, where they become a customer, make the first purchase with you. And then you have the back half of the funnel, which is kind of the retention, loyalty, referral piece. And so those are kind of the main sections, I would say, that you can break down a customer journey. It depends on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to get, because you can actually break down then each of those primary sections into, further sections. But from a high level, in order not to kind of like go too deep and go too far down the rabbit hole, that's kind of really what we're talking about for a customer journey is everything from, discovery all the way through retention and referral, and what those touch points are. And there's various things that you can do in each of those kind of buckets in order to get people to progress to the next stage or progress to the next, part of your business or part of your journey.
Yes, this is really amazing. As often people don't see the different stages of the funnel. Well, the funnel. Also, when we say funnel, they might think that it's like this crazy thing or like this fancy word, but it's just really describing different stages. But there's a lot of people at the beginning, and then
Correct.
it's less and less people, so it looks like a funnel a little bit. So it's not that fancy as a word. Mm. So as you mentioned, people can discover you you, your product, your brand in so many different places. It can be on social media, it can be through even word of mouth, like the traditional way. But there's a lot of noise out there. So in the digital world, there's a lot of noise. And this is where using something to disrupt that noise might be beneficial for e-com brands or direct to consumer brands. How can we use different tactics? Like, what are the tactics that we can use to, at some point in the customer journey, break that digital noise and create something that,
Yeah,
surprising?
totally. Yeah. So from a high level, just in general, right, the way that you surprise and delight is not by doing what everybody else is doing, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I always like to lead with. Nobody is surprised or delighted by the ordinary. So, if everybody is zigging, you have to zag. That's kind of
Yes.
my general philosophy for how to approach things. But it's interesting too to kind of take a quick second and just realize and kind of dig into what you just mentioned, right? So we're at an age where people are very, very saturated digitally with a lot of digital communication,
Hmm.
whether that's emails, digital ads, text messages, SMS, push notifications, you name it. I think the stat that I saw quoted last year is at the end of 2022, email users on average received 120 emails into their inbox daily, which is
Ooh.
crazy. So very crowded place. I think the stat with digital ads is by the end of 2022, you are subjected to somewhere around 5,000 digital ads over the course of the day, every single day. So it's a very saturated place. So that's kind of the first thing I would say is if everybody's saturated and everybody's, you know, doing
Hmm.
this, then by definition, if you really want to create some surprise and delight, you've got to figure out just something different in general to do. That's number one. Number two, the best place to start is kind of who we are as human beings. So I also like to, reel it back a little bit and just remind people that as humans, we've evolved over millennia, right? This thing called the internet and the digital world and technology is super new to us on the timeline of human evolution, right? It's been around, the internet
Yeah.
as we know it has been around maybe 50 years, if that, right? If we're being generous, but humans have evolved over, tens of thousands of years. And
Mm.
so at early humans, what we did is we learned about our environment by actually experiencing it and like going through it, picking things up, touching things. That's how we learned as humans. And so that's
Hmm.
innate and ingrained in our DNA as humans and who we are. So that's the one thing to remember is yes, it's so awesome. Technology is great and it has jumped us forward, but it's also not how we're not designed to use it. We are not used to doing everything digitally, things on screens. We are social beings and used to like actually physically interacting and kind of, tactilely experiencing things. And that's how we learn. So anyway, so that's kind of the quick picture that I always like to set for folks. But before
Yeah.
we dive in too deep, because it's important to know where we came from.
Sure.
But yes, so knowing that those are the things that I would then take when we try to inject a little bit of surprise and delight into the customer journey in various points.
You think it's important for every brand founder, marketer, whatever it is that they're doing in the company? Do you think how important it is to actually map out that journey and see the gaps in where they can create different touch points that will sort of cut the digital noise and like disrupt what's going on with them?
Totally. I mean, that's the whole point of surprise and delight, right? If you don't have the map, you don't know where you're going. So that's the
Hmm.
first step is figure out what is the experience either that you have now or what is the experience you want to craft. So that's always step one. Once you do that, then it's easy to kind of figure out where you should go, where you can inject some of this surprise and delight.
Hmm.
And we can actually use some of that science and psychology that we talked about earlier to pick points that would be more impactful, right? So step one is definitely mapping out your journey and figuring out what experience you want to give people. And then
Hmm.
based on that, we can actually use some science and psychology to pick points that are even more impactful. And so there's
Hmm.
a couple of things that we can do. And I always geek out over this because I love the science and psychology behind it. Because that's what I really love. Because at the end of the
Hmm.
day, we're making products for people. And so understanding human behavior and what's important to people and what affects people, that's something that I really like. So there's a couple of tactics we typically use in order to let brands know what places would be more impactful to place some of these surprise and delight tactics. And so I'll kind of start and we'll dive into a couple, and then you let me know. I'm happy to kind of dive super deep.
Yeah.
One of the first things that we do, and we like to call it the power of being personal. And there is a lot of research that shows that if you can connect a potential customer or a buyer with an actual human on the other side of your brand, that it's more impactful for someone, right? This goes
Mm-hmm.
back to what we just talked about. People like buying and interacting with other people, not amorphous brands.
Yes.
So if you can show that there is an actual human behind your product that was responsible for creating and manufacturing the product, that actually creates a strong bond between the potential buyer and your brand. And it makes them more likely to, one, purchase, two, to spend more money with your brand, and then three, to also recommend your brand to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see kind of how we got here, right? Like, think about your experience purchasing something on a site like Amazon. You can go and purchase a blender on Amazon, and you can go search for this blender, purchase it, have it show up at your house, and use it without ever knowing who
Mm-hmm.
actually manufactured and the effort that went into creating that blender. And if you look at this compared to what happened in the past, maybe 100 years ago, totally different, right? Typically 100 years ago, an artisan of the past, the person who you're purchasing something from, you're talking directly to the manufacturer, right? So if you go and buy a chair or a couch or a bench or something, you talk
Yeah.
directly to the artisan that actually made the thing, and then but you buy it from the person that manufactured it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's this human to human connection that created some loyalty and created a bigger impact on both sides. And so that's the number one thing that we say that we
Yeah.
typically start with brands is, if you want to create some surprise and delight and kind of create that connection, that's the first thing to do is
Mm-hmm.
figure out, one, how to cut through the noise, and then two, where are there points in your customer journey where you can actually show the human side of your brand and show who is behind the product or service that you're delivering, and how can you surface that? Because that's going to
Yeah.
create a very strong bond, and it's going to be something that stands out in people's minds.
Mm. This is so true. I always also talk about making it more personal, especially for small businesses, because it just makes it more human. Like, if you're a small business, you're not Amazon. So there is like an actual person behind the screen that, behind that social media account. And they're working so hard to sell you that one product that will help you, in your life or whatever, or makes you happy in some
Yeah,
way. And even on social media, although it's digital and we're still in the digital world, I always tell people, just like, go show your faces, tell us what you're doing. If you're creating a product, tell us how you created it, to make people involved in the journey. And that's like making things more personal is a very important part. And you're agreeing with me too.
totally.
What can they do to go to the next step? So you said the first step is to make it personal. What is the second step?
Yeah. So we do this with a lot of brands as well, right? So our
Mm-hmm.
our product allows you to do the couple things that we mentioned, right? So cut through the digital noise. That's the number one thing, right? If you
Yeah.
can't actually reach your customer, they don't pay attention to what you're doing. It doesn't actually matter what you do. So that's step one, is cut through the digital noise. Our product is basically designed to do exactly that. So we send an
Mm-hmm.
actual handwritten note directly to someone's doorstep so that you can actually pick it up and feel it, uh, you know, from your mailbox right into your coffee table. So it's very, very difficult to just delete or ignore. So that's
Mm-hmm.
number one, is actually getting your message across and cutting through the noise. Once you've done that, we like to say, you have to follow like two other main steps, which is connect with the recipient. So something personal. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we allow you to do this by injecting a little bit of personality into the message that you actually send. So you can customize it based on what the user has just done. If they've purchased something specific, mentioning what they've done. And then three is, what do you want them to do? Do you want to have a call to action? Is your gesture just to thank them? So understanding
Mm-hmm.
kind of what the action part is as well. So that's kind
Yeah.
of the three-step like 1, 2, 3 trifecta that
Hmm.
works really well. But using our product, we have a lot of folks that we have a lot of examples and case studies of how folks have been able
Yeah.
to do just that. I know we recently did a webinar where we kind of went through a couple of those examples, but one of
Yes.
my favorites is a brand called True Energy. They make a 5-hour energy like drink that's all natural.
Hmm.
So they did exactly that. So they picked a point, which was after somebody purchased their first purchase of a variety pack. And basically they injected some surprise and delight by sending our handwritten note from the founder after somebody purchased a variety pack. And it did just that. So cut through the noise because after somebody purchased, they got this nice penned note from the founder. Founder literally told a little bit of a story like, hey, thanks so much. Your purchase means
Hmm.
the world to our small team of entrepreneurs. Come back to our site anytime. And once you decide what you like, here's a discount code to purchase whatever flavor you found to be your
Yeah.
favorite. And it immediately humanized the brand. It cut through the noise. It humanized the brand. It was personal and specifically told them, here's what you should do as your next step. And it was
Hmm.
memorable, right? We had people that would hold on to that note. We have people that would reach out to them and just say, thanks so much for this gesture. We've had cases where people would write handwritten letters back to brands for their handwritten
Wow.
letter. So, I mean,
That's
it's
amazing.
impactful, it
Hmm.
works.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
again, that's how you know that the surprise and delight point has definitely worked.
Yes. Ariane, business owners in general, when they're investing in any sort of marketing activity like sending handwritten notes or doing something on social or ads or whatever, they like to measure, the return on their investment or the impact of their investment. In the digital world, it's super easy. We have all those tools that are out there to measure what's going on. However, with handwritten notes, how are we measuring the impact of what's going on, of
Yeah.
this activity that small businesses are doing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And there's definitely some ways, and there's both qualitative and quantitative ways to go about it. So
Hmm.
to your point, yes, in the digital world, super easy it's kind of very cut and dry. You know
Yeah,
very specifically in the digital world, okay, here's the amount of like eyeballs I've gotten, here's the amount of clicks I've gotten, here's the amount of conversions I've gotten. That's great. With physical mail, it's a little bit difficult, but there still are ways that you can measure things. So
yeah.
I'll actually start with some of those quantitative ways, and then we'll talk actually about some of the qualitative ways too, which I think are actually even more interesting. But on the
Hmm.
quantitative side, we work with brands all the time to help measure and track some of the analytics and KPIs. So one of the things that we use, so some of the things that you use in the digital world also apply. So we provide things like links for folks to visit, QR codes for people to scan. These things are super easy to include in our cards that go out the door. Working with creative teams, you can make really nice creative on the front of a card that has a specific link to visit or a QR code for someone to scan. In the e-com world, it's super common also to include an offer code for somebody to use. So all
Hmm.
of these things are ways that when the link is scanned or when the page is visited or when the offer code is used,
Yeah.
quantitatively, you can say, okay, I sent X amount of, letters out. I got Y amount of scans or visits, et cetera.
Hmm.
So there are ways to track. So that's one way. The other thing is because we're sending actual handwritten notes, one of the things that we do very effectively is actually include a phone number in the actual handwritten card. And we found that because it's so personal, people actually do call and text that number. So
Hmm.
we set up tracking numbers so that we can actually get the data as to how many people are calling or texting a particular number. And then we route it to, that brand's team, whether it's the customer service team or sales team or whoever it needs to go to. So there are ways that for sure you can
Yeah.
you can track what's going on. Now, on the other side of that coin is the more qualitative stuff
Yeah.
that you can see. And this is actually really cool because it's not a direct correlation like the quantitative side where you can actually, put numbers to it. But we
Exactly.
spoke a little bit earlier about people doing things like reaching out on social media and making a post about, hey, this brand just sent me this card. Thank you so
Hmm.
much. And then, celebrating it and splashing it all over social media. So
Yeah.
that's one way that you can track the qualitative side of everything. Some of the other things we also talked about is somebody's actually writing a handwritten note and sending it back to the brand.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that folks are doing that, that's a huge way
Yeah.
that you can set yourself apart. And that's definitely a checkbox in the, oh, it's working category.
For sure.
So when you start seeing things like that, then you know from the qualitative side, things are working. The last thing I'll mention too is you can also mitigate negative action. So the brand that I spoke about before, True, they actually had a situation where at some point they ended up shipping the wrong product to somebody. And in the response to the customer service rep, they literally said, hey, I ordered this product, but you actually sent me the wrong one. By the way, I got your thank you note. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Can you just send me the correct one? If you need to send me it again, just charge my card. But thanks so much. I loved your note. I'll post this on social media and I'll leave a review for you. So in a situation that should have been possibly negative and a detractor, it became a positive situation. And that's not something that you can necessarily quantify, but from a qualitative standpoint, it's hugely impactful.
You still got some sort of a feedback. It's not numbers, but you got, the message and a thank you and the post and all of that. This is pretty amazing. So what is like a success story that you had, among your customers? I don't know.
Yeah.
I know you have so many stories,
There's
but which one is your favorite? Yes.
So I think there's two. Can I cheat and tell two?
Yes,
I'll start with one, and then we'll see. All right. So one of the coolest success stories actually came from a brand that we work with called Pure Plates, and they're a healthy meal service, delivery service, subscription service. So basically, somebody can sign up. It's a meal plan, and there's different kind of levels that they can choose. And one of the things that they wanted to do is they wanted to keep folks in their subscriptions longer, and they knew when they came to us, they said, listen, folks typically sign up for one of our meal plans and they're in our meal plan for about 6 months. And then that's typically around the average time that they either cancel or they stop with us. So we want to find out why. We want to keep people in their subscription longer. So what we did is we decided, okay, armed with this data, let's try some surprise and delight to these folks. And basically what we did is we created this experience where when somebody got to month 5 and we knew that they basically were just before the point they would normally cancel, we reached out with a really nice personal handwritten note from the founder of the brand. And we said, hey, Sandy, thanks so much for being one of our top VIP customers. You rock. Thanks so much for using our product. As a token of our appreciation, because you're a VIP. And I think that they basically offered a discount code and they said, here, use this discount code, VIP 2020 for 10% off your next 3 months of your subscription. And what we found is that 68% of the people that we sent it to leveraged that and actually took advantage of it. And so it immediately jumped people over their average cancellation point, their average churn point. And it made everybody feel like a VIP. The code literally had the word VIP in it. So they were like, oh man, like this brand is awesome. That felt part of the community. So that was good. So it injected that kind of surprise and delight feeling. But also from a business standpoint, it kept everybody in their subscription, but it extended their LTV by an additional 3 months. So kind of win-win on both sides.
Pretty amazing. I really love this. I really love this. Instead of having them leave or just like sending them the regular email where they feel like, they're just a number, everybody knows all these automations that are happening, with emails and stuff. So now they're getting a real card and then they're like, oh my God, I'm a VIP. Like it just boosts their ego also.
Yeah.
So it's both psychological and beneficial for the company and beneficial for the client because they're getting a discount. I really love this. I really love this story.
So a lot of things come down to just positioning too, and how you position it, right? You could have done the same thing by just sending an email being like, hey, here's 10% off for your next 3 months. But you totally shift the narrative when you position it as, no, you are a VIP. You deserve white glove treatment. Here's your white glove treatment. You should take advantage of it. It just totally flips how people perceive things.
This is so true. Arian, I feel like we can talk about these things for like hours, but We're approaching the end of this episode, and I usually like to ask 3 questions towards the end of every episode. You can answer them the quickest way possible. Are you ready for it?
I don't know if I'm ready for it, but let's see. Shoot.
All right. How would your friends or family describe what you do for a living?
Oh, man. I think my friends and family would probably just describe me as the guy who helps brands use robots to write notes.
All right.
Actually,
like
a funny story is I just sent out a bunch of my wedding invitations. And they were handwritten wedding invitations. And all of
Oh,
my friends took pictures of them and sent it back to me. It was like, hey, did the robots do this?
did they? I'm so curious now.
Yeah.
Was it with the
The ones who know
robots?
what some of them were, yes.
Okay.
Some of them were. Some of them were actual handwritten, and actually took pictures and sent them a couple of different versions. And I was like, can you tell which one is real?
I love this. Business/personal life mixed together.
Absolutely. You got a dog food
Yeah.
in your own product.
Question 2. What is one thing that your work did for a client that you didn't expect? Like you didn't expect this result or this effect for a client?
Well, so a lot of the things that we talked about, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't kidding when I said we have worked with brands who have received handwritten notes back from their customers, and then we're just like absolutely
Mm-hmm.
blown away. So that's one of the biggest things I'd say is the impact the product has had for brands. Like when they come to us and say, I can't believe that something we did was so impactful that somebody took the time to take an 8.5 by 11
Mm-hmm.
piece of paper and write me a handwritten note back for my
Yeah.
gesture. So that's happened a bunch of times, and that that's super interesting across a
Mm-hmm.
number of different industries.
Mm-hmm.
So just knowing that somebody took the time, it was so impactful that they decided to take their time to
Mm-hmm.
show that gesture back to a brand, especially this day and age. I think
Exactly.
that always stands out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say nowadays nobody actually has like a pen and paper and they don't actually write. Everybody types on their laptops or their phones. So this is actually like going to the next level and actually writing back. So it's pretty amazing. Question number 3. Is there a book that changed your life that you would recommend to our audience?
Oh man, there are so many. Um, my favorite book that I always recommend to folks if they're thinking about starting their own business is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. That was something that actually my dad gave it to me when I first
Okay.
started my first company, and that was instrumental just from a how you think about systemizing and like setting up and running your business to kind of operate without you, and that
Mm-hmm.
from a business standpoint, fundamentally shifted how I thought of everything. Because before I was just like, oh, I want to start a business because I want to, I like the work that business is going to do. And as the owner, I'm going to be doing this all. And that's totally not true because after you grow to a certain point, your job is to kind of run the business and you're not
Yes.
actually involved in like the day-to-day work
Mm-hmm.
of the business. And so that fundamentally shifted my thinking. And I probably would not be where I am today had I not gotten into that and kind of
Mm-hmm.
read that
Mm-hmm.
book.
Perfect. We'll definitely link to this book in the description of this episode. Ariane, tell us where our audience can find you and whether or not you have like a special offer for
I
them.
do, for sure. Yes. Well, so I'm on all your normal social media, so they can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. My handle is just A Radmand. Um, but the easiest thing is if people want to check out myself or the business that I post, just visit our website, which is ignitepost.com. The coolest thing is if you want one of our robots to write and mail you a letter, you can do that for free. So hit our website. You'll see there's a button that says send me a sample. Click it, tell us where you live, and we'll have one of the robots write and send you a sample for free. So that's there's no risk. You should definitely do it. It's super cool. You can see it for yourself. So that's my suggestion for everybody that's curious. Go check it out.
Perfect. This is pretty amazing. Thank you, Ariane, for being a guest on my podcast. And to all the listeners, I'll be back next week with a new episode.